The Philadelphia 76ers have now dropped to 1-3 to start the season, and there are still no answers on what is going on with Joel Embiid and when he will be back to the floor. We're going to break down what has happened new, what has transpired regarding the situation, and why Joel Embiid might be the one leaving his team out to dry a little bit more than we have acknowledged. Now, I do want to introduce Ryan Coyle to the channel right here. He's going to be getting involved on both the Sixers and Phillies Digest side of things, so I'm excited to have him. And Ryan, I apologize in advance for this absolute firestorm that is the Sixers organization, but appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, appreciate you having me, Sean. Looking forward to being a part of the channel and obviously working alongside of you. A lot going forward in this NBA season, and hopefully we get to see Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George all on the floor at the same time. But as we know from being Sixers fans our entire life, they never make it easy. So I'm not expecting anything good to come of this soon. But fingers crossed, sooner than later, at least one of those two between George and Embiid return to the floor.
Yeah, absolutely there. And we do have a couple new developments for starters. We know that the Sixers have been fined $100,000 for kind of their management of the Joel Embiid situation. Nick Nurse still staying about as tight-lipped as he possibly could regarding the situation, what the outlook is, and even why they're being fined. And he declined to answer that question at the press conference today, which I do think just makes everything worse from an optics standpoint, from everybody trying to understand what the situation is. So we've talked plenty about this, and I do want to dive into a couple new reports. But I've kind of ranted about this in a variety of ways. What's kind of your vibe on what's going on within the Sixers organization, and where do you place blame for what exactly is going on?
From the recent press conferences and just kind of seeing Nurse talk, and even on like the sideline tonight, watching the Pistons game, like obviously the performance on the floor wasn't great, but he hasn't in the past, I think, been more like one of the more animated coaches in the NBA, like kind of more of an even keel guy from what I've seen from him. He was showing a little bit more animation tonight. And it's just like one of those things where something's bothering someone and they need to get it out and express it in a way. And he might have been taken out on the refs a little bit more tonight, but you can kind of get that vibe from the press conference that he basically just wants to be like Daryl Morey should be up here
Yeah.
answering these questions, direct those to him, and he's been nowhere to be seen. I mean, I think what media day was the last time that we heard from Daryl Morey, and
Yep.
it's kind of hard to kind of trash on him because essentially it would be like Nick Nurse trashing on his boss up above him. But it's like I don't have the answers to your questions. If it was up to me, he would be out there playing. Paul George, maybe a different answer because we actually saw the injury. We
Right.
saw something transpire that we can actually point to and be like, all right, that might be a multiple week thing. But the Embiid situation, it continues to be weird and no real clarity. So it even puts us kind of in a bind. It's like, when's he coming back? Well, we don't know. We're not in the building and no one seems to know. And so the NBA basically said, all right, we're going to fine you until you kind of have a little bit more clarity in the situation.
Yeah, and kind of my root of all of this is I think the Sixers have made life incredibly more difficult on themselves than needed to be the case. That I do think this is a very avoidable situation. And whatever is going on, if Joel Embiid did get re-injured or what is being reported now, and to pull up these exactly, did want to pull up this up from Sam Amick today, who writes that, quote, one league source with knowledge of the NBA's investigation said that while it is true Embiid did not suffer a new injury into his surgically repaired left knee during the Olympics, the knee was unstable enough that there was concern about further damage being done if Embiid had played last week. The Sixers listed, quote, left knee injury management as the reason for the absences, and the league sources said that determination was found to be inaccurate by the NBA. Embiid, in their determination, is dealing with a legitimate left knee issue, but league sources say the NBA is focused on the contrast between the Sixers' public statements in its investigation. On one hand, Sixers officials have publicly indicated that Embiid did not suffer a setback or any new injury heading into the season. On the other, they had openly shared their plans to avoid having Embiid play in any back-to-backs this season. And I do think that is the root of what really kicked things up from an NBA standpoint. It was Joel opening his mouth and saying that he will probably never play back-to-backs for the rest of his career. While I have zero issue with that plan and totally get the concept there, I do think that is what kind of brought things on to the NBA's attention, at least. And as I kind of broke down in my last video speaking about this, the NBA's vested interest is keeping the product as the best it possibly can be and getting that TV revenue as much as they possibly can. That's really what they're protecting here is the TV, making sure that your star players are there for primetime games. So with that report being read, Ryan, where does that change your level of concern for Joel specifically here? Because we still haven't got that like concrete information beyond just that.
I know the Sixers' track record with their medical history hasn't exactly been glowing, and in
Understatement.
and assessing these injuries and dealing with them. But at the same point, like I still don't think that they would have given him that extension if they didn't have some clarity that, at some point he will be okay. It's not like this is like a Greg Oden situation where he's never going to play again. At least you hope so. But I also thought the one part of the tweet was really interesting where it's like, if he played last week, he might have re injured his knee. Well, how is he going to re injure a knee that you're saying that wasn't hurt? And all right, what's the difference between like this week and last week? Like, obviously, when you get hurt, there's a certain recovery period. If you come back early, there's a risk of injury. But if you're saying he didn't get hurt, then what is it? Like, there's a difference, I think, between coming back to re-injure something and managing an injury to the point where, all right, we can go, every play 2 out of 3 games going forward, something like that. But we still don't know the plan. We
Right.
still don't know the plan. It's like what Trump said, or whoever said it, one of the politicians,
The concepts of
concepts
the
of a plan.
plan. Yeah.
Yeah, and there seems to be no real concepts of the plan either.
Yeah, that is well said there. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, like I've been a Joel defender very much so on this channel, and I do see the comments calling me an Embiid apologist. I understand that there. For what it's worth, like this is a lot of different regimes that Joel has dealt with that these are the same issues of him, 30 minutes before tip off, is he playing, is he's not, or he's going to go through pregame warm-ups and then decide. Joel has more power than most star players as far as his concept of when he's playing, when he's not, his control. And I get, like, I do think he should be handled differently than your average NBA player because of these circumstances, the knee issues, the injuries he's dealt with. That all makes sense to me. But I also think there has to be a hard conversation about, like, this doesn't help anybody, and you are putting yourself in the worst spot here by these questions being unanswered. I understand he doesn't love the reputation of being this injury-prone guy, or he likes to keep his medical information as private as possible. I get that to an extent, but dog, you're in the NBA. Like
Yeah.
this isn't a normal world. This isn't you can go to a doctor's appointment and nobody knows about this. This is your livelihood. This is your career path. This is everything. So I do think that there needs to be a little bit more of a wake up call to Joel directly there. I do think he deserves a little bit of blame for a lot of this. Like, really, I've separated this completely as far as what the actual situation is and how they're handling it / what they're saying. I have no issue with Joel not playing right now. I get it. It's ugly on the court. The Sixers team is at the worst because of it. And to pull up the exact stats with and without Joel Embiid again, it's pretty telling that last season in particular, 31-8 when he was there, 16-27 in the games that he missed. And they are a championship contender when Joel Embiid is on the floor, and they're the furthest thing from it when he's not there. There may not be a bigger gap for any player in the NBA for when he's there and when he's not than Joel Embiid. But the bottom line is, like, none of this matters, and none of this increases our optimism of him being healthy for a playoff run if we're at the start of the season already dealing with that. So, Ryan, as we look ahead here, when do you have any feel for when Joel will step on the floor? And I guess what is the over-under you would set for games played with Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and Paul George all on the floor together?
That I would set it at 19 and a half
Oh, okay.
for the three of them in the regular season because I understand getting chemistry and whatnot, but I think they're going to try and maximize as much as they can between getting Embiid and George. But like, if Embiid's not going to play back to backs, if Embiid, who knows when he comes back?
Yeah.
We have no idea. Um, what are we now? 5 games into the season.
4.
I'd say 4 games into the season. I'd say he'd probably be closer to returning around the 15 game mark than the 10 game mark. I'd say maybe mid November to the end of November ish. That we maybe get an idea, but it's really hard because they're not the lips are sealed tight in the situation, and it's really hard to decipher. But if I had to make a guess, I would probably say then maybe ramp him up to really get going kind of by Christmas, and treat maybe like the back half of November into the middle of December as kind of his preseason warm up ish period.
Yeah, could very well possible there. And the last question before we wrap things up here is, like, what is your level of panic meter for this being something that doesn't go away, or that, like, this is a long-term thing? Where are you at from 1 to 10?
I'd probably say a 5. I mean, injuries with Embiid have always obviously been at the forefront kind of his career. But I honestly do think that there is something obviously wrong with him, but it's more so a long-term thing
Yeah.
than a short-term thing like that. It's not going to impact him on a nightly basis. It might just derail the longevity of his career. But I honestly do think there is somewhere deep down a plan where they're like, basically, let's try something new. We were able to, and I think it kind of got pushed back, and there's been so much negative feedback because George has been out as well. If George and Maxey were both out there, you'd be like, all right, I at
Yeah.
least feel confident that we have these two while Embiid's out, while he's missing games on these back to backs. Because George hasn't been there, it's kind of blown up the situation a little bit more. So I definitely think there is deep down actually a plan, and they're basically trying something new to the point where we can make sure he's healthy by April, by May for a potential run. So I'm not pressing the panic button quite yet, but I do think it would be beneficial to everyone because I think the situation is just going to get more and more hostile if there isn't a clear cut kind of answer of what's going on down there in Camden at the facility.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that sentiment here. And obviously, we know what a superior talent that Joel Embiid is and how important he is to this team. So hopefully, we have some more clarity soon. Hopefully, Saturday is the day that we get the return as they do face off with the Memphis Grizzlies. But as always, appreciate each and every one of you guys for tuning in this video here. Say what's up to Ryan in the comments and any other thoughts on your mind below. Make sure you're smashing that subscribe button if you have not already. Drop a like on this video. I'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.